once they hit the market and people were talking about them, they went like wildfire. And
If you haven't been to Billy Goats or driven the high country, like they are steep, loose, shaly, rocky, bumpy.
I've seen this one.
That's the brief,
Yeah.
right?
You
The
are
best-
standing in a puddle and it looked like you've been doing it for hours, looking angry straight down at the camera.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Off-Grid Down Under podcast by MDC. We've got some extra special guests today. We've got Steve Zamit.
again,
Yes, the godfather of caravanning in Australia, as he self-proclaims anyway.
yeah, right.
We've got General Manager of our Commercial and Product Division within MDC, James Field. Thanks for joining
Thanks
us.
for having me.
And Director and Owner of the business, Vaughan Hindley.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Welcome. Look, thanks very much for joining us all, guys. The purpose of today is to talk a little bit about the evolution of off-road caravanning in Australia, and I guess where caravans have come from and where we're at today. So there's been a big evolution from what was traditionally, fiberglass caravan, nice and lightweight with a 50mm ball hitch, and you tow it up the road and go on holidays in the caravan park, to today's models, which are, we're talking a couple of tons worth of caravan, heavy-duty reinforced steel chassis, independent suspension, full power systems. They're a long way from where they were, and that obviously brings with it an expectation. Customers are spending more. Customers want more value for their money, and they're expecting more from the product that they're buying. So the purpose today is really talk about that and just see where the market's come from, where it's at, and where MDC plays a role in what we offer to customers.
Well, I think that evolution has been very much market-driven through customer expectation. Now, for as long as I can remember, there's been off-road product around when I first started getting in. But when I bought my first camper product, to go out and purchase an off-road caravan, it was so cost prohibitive that I ended up buying something more simple, pop-up, pop-out in an off-road.
What did you buy, Steve?
I bought a
Gold
Goldstream. I bought a Goldstream back in, it'd have to be 20 years ago, something like that. And it was a good trailer. It was the best I could find in that style of thing at the time. But it was great. I towed that thing everywhere. It went everywhere I wanted to go. It was, on the heavy side, and I was towing it with a Navara. A lot learnt from there. But the development of specifically our market, the imported product over my time in this industry has been stellar. It's just been incredible. I remember the early days of the off-road campers. There was so many factors in there that made it a bit of a muddy. The water was fairly muddy back then because people had traditionally seen these $15,000 and up products that were specifically off-road built. But there were so many people that wanted to take their family camping. They wanted a trailer that they could tow behind their Commodore or their four-wheel drive, whatever, and they wanted something they could afford. Enter the $5,000 trailers. But the trouble there was what those trailers were designed to do isn't what some people want to do. So they basically buy a garden trailer with a folding tent on it, and then drive to Cape York, and then wonder why it fell to bits because that's not what it was. And
it wasn't designed for that.
Yeah. So you've got to hand it to the market, specifically more so MDC was the rapid evolution to make those kind of products more off-road. And then enter 2013, MDC introduced the first import hybrid, the XT10. And that was a game changer. That style of caravan, that style of product has been so rapid and they became so popular. I don't think I'd guess that the XT12 is probably one of the most prolific off-road caravans in the market, that and the old XT10. And of course, the market is driven by the consumer and what the consumer wants. And they always want more. They want more convenience, less effort, and makes for a more enjoyable trip. But the other thing too is the expectation of where people want to take these things has also driven much stronger engineering, more thought into the suspension, more thought into the chassis.
That's really interesting. You've really covered a real evolution, I guess, of kind of the MDC growth. Tell us a bit about your knowledge, because you've had an ear to the ground for how long in the industry?
Oh, look, I started in the off-road industry in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
I sold my business and was going to take a year off, and then got offered a job with a pay packet I couldn't refuse at Supercentre, which was owned by the same mob as Four-Wheel Drive Action. And that got me involved in the off-roading, the four-wheel drive action DVDs, that sort of thing. And then into camper trailers.
Sure.
And so on, and here I am today.
So how did you come to join MDC? Was it through those four-wheel drive action videos and probably seeing Vaughan out on a bunch of those trips and stuff?
I can tell you, we naturally just attract the greatest talent in the industry. And I mean, look who's sitting on the panel here today, right?
Well, it was a bit of a thing because I was doing, like, I was supposed to start work at Supercentre on the Monday. They rang me up on the Thursday and said, can you come and work tomorrow and do a video? Yeah, all right. I said, what do you want me to do? Turned up at the office super early in the morning, and we jump in the four drives, go up. Apparently, we have to do a winch video, which was on the Dominator winch at the time, and get the best winching photo ever taken in Australia.
I've seen this one.
That's the brief, right?
You are standing in a puddle, and it looked like you've been doing it for hours, looking angry, straight down at the camera.
He probably was. He probably had me.
He was the cover image for the actual recovery straps, weren't you?
It's coverage image for the winch, and they had like 4 metre by 5 metre or whatever they were, banners in the stores. I'll never forget the first time I saw one. I felt that awkward. I walked outside.
We need to get a copy of this image
I'll get you
so
one.
our customers can have a look at it.
But
it's
yeah,
pretty
but
cool.
that was the thing, because ARB at the time had this winching photo of the guy sort of wading through water with the Jeep behind him. And it was a pretty good image.
Yeah, towing the strap over the shoulder.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And yeah, we had to do it. So that was a huge day. We spent hours and hours winching 2 vehicles at once up this track in the Wattigans. And then they said, okay, well, let's go get a photo. And they found the deepest puddle. Mind you, this is the middle of winter. Right.
Well, the Wattigan stinks at the best of times. Yeah. The mud up there is horrendous.
So the air temperature is about, 12 degrees. The water temperature is about 8 degrees. And I was in it for hours. And Anthony Worry was a photographer, and he's brilliant photographer. He's done so much for MDC. And the whole gig was get that shot as I pull the winch rope tight, it flicked the water up, looked like it was raining. I'm drenched, I'm freezing. But I looked angry was because Dave Luke was supposed to keep the spiders away from me, because I'm standing in this water and there's these spiders as big as my head walking across the water. I'm like, Dave, you got one job, get rid of the spiders. But we got it. And then I started doing a lot of video work, and then went across to Black Series for a while and doing their video work. And, of course, Vaughan's gone, hey, he's pretty good at that. We might grab him. And he did. And so I kicked off for a while in 2013. But unfortunately, there was some industry issues beyond any of our control where I had to move on. Sure. And then when I got booted from somewhere else, and I said thanks to all their customers on Facebook, 6 minutes later, he asked me when I come up to Brisbane and have a chat.
You came up and filmed over 90 masterclass videos, I think, didn't you? You weren't scared of the camera after that.
That was the first job.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that changed so much. I'll give you one video in particular, which was on canvas care. Now, in the industry at large at the time with soft floor campers and whatnot, torn canvas and ripped seams, etc., were rampant. But no one had ever educated the users on the right way to do it. Like, you don't want a drum-tight tent. That's wrong. You want it taut but not tight. So we do a video on, look, if you can see the seams, the stitching in there, it's too tight. And this is what you do if you've got a leaky seam, et cetera, et cetera. All of a sudden, claims on canvas, gone. Overnight. I think since we did that video, I've known of about 2. Yeah. So that's how you change an industry. And of course, MDC lead, and I see other brands and also comments on other brand Facebook groups where the information is word for word of what we as MDC have put out into the market. Things like the moisture absorbers. I've been telling people, because we did it with our caravan, I've been telling people to do it since 2012. And now someone says, oh, I've got a bit of moisture, and every punter out there is saying you've got to buy these moisture absorber packs.
There's also the ones that go under your mattress now too,
Yes.
which are really good as well. They're a nice addition.
They were in our video that we did 6 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, so we've led the way.
A lot of people don't know when you sleep on those beds, on the hard floor campers and things like that, mattress with a hard floor, you get condensation. So it's good to have stuff under there.
That point where your body heat meets cold, and then boom, you got moisture.
What were some of the early challenges that brands faced when they were looking to build off-road caravans, specifically away from the traditional on-road vans?
Well, I can only talk about the imported side of the thing because my history in the industry didn't involve working for an Australian manufacturer. But one of the things I found with imports, and back then when so many people wanted to do it, was inexperience. Now, so many young entrepreneurs wanted to come into it, and, you know, whether it was jump on the bandwagon or whatever their intent was, inexperience, not having an understanding, was probably what held it back. And then you had some operators who were smarter than the average bear, got in the products, learnt the products, and evolved them from there. And when I worked for MDC in 2013, one of the things I could say in all honesty to the customers when comparing the product with something else they may have gone and looked at earlier was all the small little innovations, you know, even if it was a gas strut in the corner of the door of the fridge slide, you know, that's there so you don't skin your knuckles on the thing. Because obviously the boss, when he's been out using it and has opened the fridge slide, he skinned his knuckles, rung the factory and said, I want a bloody gas strut on this now. So that was really important. And even back then you could see the MDC hard floors had come a lot further. But with the introduction of the hybrids, it took everyone else a while to come up with their first one. Like MDC were a few years before. And
why do you think they were early to the game in that respect?
Smarter.
Experience?
Just smarter, more hungry to go through it. You know, Vaughan's the man
out there.
Instigated. He was the first one to do it, to build a hybrid overseas. And it was a huge success. Like, you know, I'm sure the first few months were people would have been a bit sort of dubious. But once they hit the market and people were talking about them, they went like wildfire. And
were there things that with the learnings that you had around that time, Vaughan, like the experiences when you were out camping in them and that you took home?
Absolutely. So, you know, as soon as we get a model in, we're taking it out and beating it up, and what can we break, what can we improve. And when you do look at the evolution of the hybrid caravans, like in 2014, we brought in a 19-foot and a 22-foot. And after about 1 year, the market just absolutely would not accept an imported caravan of that size. And so we had to drop that line completely. And it was all about the small stuff. And we had about a 4-year window where we were the only guys that were building an off-road hybrid overseas and importing them. And so anything that you see in the market at the moment is a copy or a derivative of what we built during 2013. And obviously that market has now started to dominate the Australian scene.
So you guys really tested them. I think MDC hybrids were one of the first ones to head up billy goats. Is that right?
It was the prototype, the XT10E.
Yeah, well.
XT10.
Yeah, well.
There was no E then, but it was the prototype. And it was all over. That was actually on a four-wheel drive action DVD, and there was like Glenn Haddon there and Ruthie and Keno dragged it up there. And then people were like, is there actually anything inside of it?
Yeah.
Of course, there was a full caravan inside of it, you know?
It's harder to probably disassemble the van to take on a trip than it is just to hitch it up and go, right?
Well, this is the thing too, right? And James, you'd know this, that a lot of the structural integrity of the van is everything that's actually built inside of it that holds it all together.
Yeah.
You can't just have an outside shell.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it'd collapse. It just wouldn't
Yeah.
hold together.
And look, if you haven't been to Billy Goats or driven the high country, like they are steep, loose, shaly, rocky, bumpy.
You
We've
want to know
done-
something really sad? They'd graded it when I was down there last. They'd actually put dozers and whatnot
well.
and smoothed it out. It was a smooth track.
There's probably some video out there we could cut to
Yeah.
show that, but that was a crazy drive, and that's probably not something I'd do
No.
myself.
So I guess coming back to that, I guess how have maybe James, you can allude to some of this. How have the materials and design philosophies changed over the years? Probably if you look back 10, 15 years.
Yeah. So I've been in industry since 2006, and I've worked for a number of companies, including dealerships that have had both Australian-made product and imported products. So I've got a fairly good understanding of how those things are put together, and I've resheeted many vans. And one of the things comes down to your framing is very, very important. So at MDC, we use an aluminium welded frame. Still, a lot of the manufacturers here in Australia will use a Meranti frame, and they'll have started in the on-road space, building on-road caravans, and simply put some independent suspension on it, put a 6-inch razor in the chassis, and then market that as an off-road product. But they don't realise how much structural integrity, back to your point, Vaughan, that you need in the body itself, whether that's in your actual side frames, aluminium or Meranti, and also in the way in which you build inside. So certainly comes down to material choice for that, for sure. And chassis is incredibly important as well. So every chassis that we manufacture through our China manufacturing partner is fully FEA tested, and elements of it we actually do destructive testing on as well. So we are going and sourcing good quality steel for our chassis, doing genuine testing, both simulated and in real life.
Because I guess manufacturing or designing, I guess, a product is, and I guess that's primarily your role, right? You sit there with CAD files designing a van. It's not just about get a chassis, put some wheels on it, build a box. You're looking at everything from how's it going to be distributed in terms of the weight, carrying capacity, the balance of the trailer, and then its application. So you don't want a ride height that's too high. You don't want your center of gravity here or there or anywhere. Like, there are obviously some of the considerations you got to think about. Yeah. Is there something that really stands out to you that's been, well, without giving the secrets away, I guess?
Yeah, I think, and you're right, it is. It's a big juggling act, and I like to think about it like a giant jigsaw puzzle. So you've got all of the wants, desires, and needs of the customers. So what they want in there. Everyone wants everything.
Everyone's clearance,
correct.
Articulation.
And we're talking about specification as well. Like if off-road and off-grid go hand in hand. So then you're looking at your electrical specification. All of these things, when you put them in, adds genuine weight to the product. And then you've got a layer of that where you've got all these rules and regulations you've got to comply to. And that's down to weights, distribution. It's around clearances to certain things. So you've got to think about all of this when you're designing it. So that's probably one of the most challenging parts of it. And I guess if you're looking at the way product is going, is weight is becoming critical. So we're all looking at materials and way to do things, aligning with different suppliers to try and save ourselves weight, because the customer wants more and more. The units aren't getting lighter, but we've still got to keep under a certain weight to still appeal to the tow vehicles of today.
Lithium must have been a godsend when that came in from a caravan designer's point of view.
Yes.
Absolutely, lithium's helped. And, MDC's part of the RV MAP program. And so depending on how many berth the actual van is how much there's a designated payload that we actually have to give on that particular van.
Yeah, there is. So, and that's part of the challenge, right? So participating in RV MAP, we've got the payload estimator or the payload calculations we have to comply to, and you have your berth allocations, then you've got to make sure you account for your freshwater weight, cylinders that are full, provisions that you've got for things like fridge slides, generator storage. All of that you have to factor into when you're designing a product to make sure that at the end of the day, when it's built and you weigh it, you've got adequate payload between your tear and ATM.
I guess that's a good segue. It's a question I was going to look at later on, but weights and tear weights and things like that, about what's published and what's measured. I guess tell us a little bit about the compliance or the regulations around that.
So in industry, a few years ago, there was a big regulation or transition of rule change from one act to another. But what that meant was there was more regulation in industry. In particular, back to your question, is you have to go and publish on a government public database the tear weight of every single unit you manufacture. So there is a written record of everything that you do. So at MDC, every trailer that we will assemble out of our assembly facilities, we will weigh on our in-house weigh bridges. They're calibrated regularly. We have some checks and balances in the back end of that to make sure that we're keeping track and keeping an eye on consistency of weights. If something comes in a little heavier, we go and check, why is that so? Maybe the team forgot to drain some water out.
Sure. And there's obviously is there an industry standard around what that published tear weight can be, as in it has to be filled with water, it has to have the gas bottles fitted, things like that? Or
Yeah, so tear weight's a defined term, and it's essentially as manufactured with all things as standard and all mandatory fluids, but that excludes things like water, diesel. So basically it's like a dry tear weight, but with everything that you've advertised that comes standard with. So some others industry sometimes try to use some inventful language, let's call it that, in terms of what's standard or what's a additional extra.
yes.
And they'll try and use that and deduct that off the tear weight. But at the end of the day, when you pick it up, you want to know what it weighs, right?
Correct. So it's not about just looking at the advertised tear weight, it's looking at what the finished product tear weight's going to be in line with the specification that you've ordered. Yeah. So a 2.5 ton caravan, by the time you've specced it up, could actually be a 2.8 or something
Yes.
like that without
Yeah,
too much
so
problem.
in the current environment, it's actually illegal to advertise something and go, okay, here's my whatever brand caravan, but the tear weight is, let's just say, 2,500 kilos, but it doesn't include the air conditioner, but it doesn't include the awning, it doesn't include the box. You know, it's actually illegal now to actually advertise a product like that. So the advertised tear weight has to be as you provide it to the customer. That's the new law.
And that then comes back to the RV map accreditation and requirement to say a certain berth van has to have a certain amount of available payload. So that has to
Yeah, and
make
when
sure
we-
it all sits within those guidelines.
When we talk about RV Map, that is a program that we subscribe to as being good citizens in industry.
It's a voluntary program.
Yeah, it is voluntary, but it also has high hurdles to jump. So not everyone is actually part of that program. And MDC was the first importer in Australia to actually meet that level and join that program. And when you have people like James Field, who was doing that work for the caravan industry of Australia for 6 years prior to coming to MDC, it makes it a lot easier, right? But I guess also the hurdles are a lot higher. When you're going back to the colleagues that you were working with and they were critiquing our product, they're going to look very hard. And they weren't doing anything that wasn't correct. But, you know, the microscope's there, right?
For sure.
But there were some distinct product improvements from there in terms of safety, including jacks, purpose-built jacking points under the chassis. That was valuable to the business in product improvement. And I'm a big fan of the RV map thing. I think that was a very exciting process for us. I know it was hard work for you. But
I agree with you. I was going to say that as well. I think if you take away the hurdles and you look at it, we got so much improvement out of the product during that period, coupled with our ISO 9001 certification. Those things generate consistency, product improvement, and also generates the team to think in different ways. And that's both from our product design team, engineering, our China manufacturing partners, manufacturing techniques. So all of that improved significantly during that period.
Look, I think that's fundamentally, I guess, from a customer's point of view, it's all designed to give them confidence and make sure everyone's doing the right thing in the industry. And I guess, Steve, in your time, have you seen things that have really shaped the standards that have, I guess, come into the industry? So have there been things that have historically happened? I think lithium batteries is probably the best case scenario where, not that it was necessarily about caravan issues, but everyone recognised there was a hazard around batteries. And in enclosed spaces, there's now a requirement for those batteries to be accessible from outside the van.
yeah, look, even if it's a tiny percentage improvement in safety, it's beneficial. You should do it. And you know, let's be honest. We've all seen headlines, caravan fires, this, that, and for whatever reason, I think lithium the type of lithium batteries, us and many others are putting them in there now. The iron.
The intelligence or the battery management systems that are built into them.
And because they're not the lithium ion batteries that you see all the scooters and everything catching fire
They're
on.
Slightly different variation.
So they're different. So there is more inherent safety. The things like their management systems are better. So the risks are enormously lowered. But it's the same as anything. You've only got to spend a week on social media and you'll see people making their own gas system modifications and things like that.
Big no-no.
That's right. And it's dangerous. It is scary. But with all the rules that apply to us now and the attention on compliance with those rules is a great thing. And I think it's going to improve product safety. It's going to keep improving products. I know some of the hurdles you've got to jump, you sort of wonder about. Not everything is helpful from a manufacturing point of view or design point of view, but it's all there to improve safety. And while we're doing that, we look for ways to improve the customer experience with other items that we fit to caravans, etc.
Cool. So, James, you're probably good to weigh in on this one. What defines a quality off-road camper versus an on-road caravan?
I think a lot of it comes back to the way in which you support the product. I think that's got a lot to do with it, and you're not going to support something that you haven't invested a lot of time and effort in making sure is going to have longevity. You're going to align with suppliers and parts that you know are going to support the customer out there in the field. But when you're talking about capability, obviously a lot of it comes down to your suspension systems, your tyres, your couplings, your chassis design, and things like that.
Electrical system, things like quality around the electrical systems. We see it. I travel a lot, and electrical systems are something that I wouldn't compromise on. You're always checking things out, especially off road. Things rattle, they shake, they come loose. It's important to keep an eye on them. But on top of that, having a quality system might mean there's a good quality circuit breaker, things like that are going to add that extra level of safety to you long term. So I guess trusted brands play a big role in that as well.
For sure.
So I guess looking at then the validation or the engineering that goes into that, I guess what's involved with that? You talked about some of the compliance or testing things around the chassis. Is there more, validation processes? You talked a little bit about the ISO 9001 certification process.
Yeah.
Can you just elaborate on that for us in terms of from a design point of view?
There's about 200 plus individual standards, rules, regulations, and design rules that apply to a recreational vehicle. And as I said before, all of those intertwine and sometimes compete with one another in terms of which takes precedent and how to design it. So ISO 9001, which is our quality management system certification, helps us manage those 200 plus rules over 30 plus models, which we usually are updating or upgrading every 12 months, tweaking as we go, making on the fly slight tweaks due to customer feedback. So having those systems in place really helps us keep track and maintain and monitor those things so that we're all busy, right? And we all want to work and just work on the new bright and shiny object and new model. But the trick is making sure that you're doing that, and that's important for the business, but you're not forgetting the current range or the legacy ranges that you've got, and you're continually monitoring and making sure you're keeping those up to speed.
It's making sure you're ticking the boxes along the way. It's not, exactly.
Yeah.
So then the next step, I guess, I don't know, you're not that old, but how things like CAD, have you always worked with CAD in terms of the design, or were you back on the paper and the sketchboard back in the day in terms of designing vans?
So these days, all of the modelling is done 3D because it really helps simulate. You'll be able to ascertain clearances, what will work, what won't, because you can model and make sure things open and close, shut, they don't bind on one thing. And then from that, you go to prototyping, and that's the number one thing. So you'll build at least one prototype of every single model to check things, compliance, and then we'll road test it, and then we'll go from there. So
that's a big part of it, road testing, right, as well, actually getting out there, using it, finding out where the little bumps and lumps are that we need to iron out along the way.
It's much better that we find these things out as a team before it gets to a customer.
Yeah, bringing out a Series 1 and then realising you got to make all these changes and have callbacks and things like that, of course.
And there's, the opportunity at MDC, if you work here, is to take the product out. And quite often it's because we're in the day-to-day of MDC and caravanning, we look for different things, and some of our employees will come back to us after a weekend trip in one of our vans and will give us feedback that is something so simple that we don't actually see because we're looking for more complex things. And so there's always a lot of valuable feedback just through using the product.
I've come back using the 17, and I came back and said, well, I want the cupboard to hinge the other way because I only access that particular cupboard from actually outside the door when I want to grab something quick and easy. Yeah, that's something that can be modified or considered anyway.
Yeah, you're right, Vaughan. The feedback is critical. It's not just from from our staff using the vans, but we will get feedback from our branch managers, from our sales staff as a set process, because at the end of the day, they're the ones speaking to the customers, talking to potential customers as well. We get it through our model development meetings that we run regularly. So we have various avenues in the business to make sure that we're always considering feedback and improving wherever we can.
Here's an exciting one. Are there any materials or design choices that perhaps were a little bit too experimental? Not necessarily MDC, but in the industry. Like, what have we learnt from the industry?
Aluminium chassis.
I was thinking the same thing.
Aluminium chassis, and the ugliest, most impractical thing I ever saw that just fell to bits was a fiberglass-bodied rear fold camper. It was horrendous.
Did it just look bad, or was it actually?
It was
It
so
looked
ugly.
bad too, actually.
And
it was
gotta look
totally
good, right?
non-functional.
It was as
Yeah, right.
ugly as a robber's dog, I tell you. And it cracked, it did this, it did that. It was probably the first fiberglass one to come out of the factories in China.
Yeah.
And I remember getting in the showroom thinking, do we really want this?
I can imagine how chalky it'd
And it
be
wasn't
after a couple of
MDC,
years,
but
right?
I'm thinking, do we really want
Just
this?
to clarify, it was not an MDC.
No, it was definitely not an MDC.
and was never an MDC.
No.
But I
And-
guess that's the difference with our company, right? Is because we have a one-to-one relationship with our factory in China, but it's also our team that comes up with the designs and the products and the engineering is actually coming this way rather than a factory creating something and going, hey, you can buy this off the shelf and throw it into the market, but they don't actually camp the way we do.
Yeah, some of the other companies manufacturing, it's almost like Build-A-Bear. You know, you have this standard thing, and then you can, or cake decorating, and you just put this. Okay, that's yours.
Yeah.
And some of these factories might be building for 10 or more importers in Australia. And the big benefit of what we do, where we are one supplier, one factory, and it's exclusive, is we retain all our IP.
Mm.
You know, nothing gets shared outside of the business. Where if you're coming up, there's two things that happens. If you're sharing a factory with other people, that factory is all about themselves. Okay, so if you give them a great idea, you do the development and spend your money and time on an improvement, they're going to use that to lure even more business in.
Of course, they see
So they're going to share it.
Take your design and go, hey,
and
I can do
we've
this for you.
seen this absolute firsthand. So that creates a problem for them where everyone says, well, I'm not going to spend money developing this stuff. I'm not going to do homework for these other 10 companies. No way. And
that's ultimately why you see a lot of a similar looking product in the
and
market.
that's where the
right?
product stagnates.
Yeah.
And then you'll get companies like MDC, say with our AC Plus range, releasing that. It lights a fire under everyone. Well, we've got to have that.
Mm.
Everyone's like, oh, MDC have got that. We've got to have that. So that's when the improvements will come elsewhere because MDC did it first. That happens a lot.
That's why it happens, yeah.
But also from a customer's perspective, if there's an importer that's buying from several factories overseas, all their parts are a little bit different.
Yes.
And so then how can you carry spare parts for your product from 3 or 4 different factories?
Well, we must have $1 million worth of spare parts just in the Brisbane
We
warehouse.
absolutely do, but because we have a one-one relationship,
Yes.
Everything fits.
all our general parts fit all our models going back 10 plus years, right?
Yes.
because we haven't changed suppliers.
And we've just set up the online parts store in the last sort of 12 months for it to really fire.
And
so
that's
all that
huge.
stuff's available now. And look at the volume of orders we get coming out of that as well. Things like bushes, suspension system, like just parts, little bits and pieces that over time, if you're using your van, like I'd use my product for 40 nights a year sometimes. You do get through it and you wear things out, and that happens.
And that's something that not all consumers actually consider is down the track, if I need spare parts, is that company going to be around? Are the spare parts going to be available? With MDC, actually, they absolutely are.
Is it a 50 mil bush or a 53 mil bush, or is it a
49 mil.
Yeah, there you go.
Generally, it will be 49 mil unless it's the Jackson or the Cruiser Slide. So, yeah, don't go buying 50 mil elsewhere unless you've spoken
Don't
to
take
me
my
first.
advice, take his.
Oh,
But that's why we got the store. You put in the model van that you need and ask the question, you get the right product. Well, that's interesting. I guess, look, is James, is there a magical nirvana that a designer can get to in terms of finding that balance, weight, strength, and durability in trailer design? Are we ever going to get there?
Yeah, XT19 HRT.
I was about to say, I don't think anyone's got there yet, but we're certainly trying, as is everyone else. It's a balancing act. It's an act of compromise, but I think we're all getting better. And at MDC, we, as Vaughan said, we do attract good talent. So we've got some very, very talented designers, engineers on board, where we are continually pushing the boundaries and looking for the next new thing.
It's always a compromise, right? It's the short, fast, cheap.
Well, you can't have all three.
Cheap. That's right. You can't have all three. You can only pick two.
Yes.
So, look, I guess we put a big commitment behind a lifetime warranty on the chassis and drawbar. It's why make that commitment?
I want this one.
You want this one? Okay.
Oh, my God, yeah. Lifetime warranty on the chassis. To be quite honest, we've really been doing that forever anyway. There's a little mistake a few years ago, and even if it was just a shock tower error in a piece in the shock tower, and it was recalled, it was what we thought was fixed. But every now and then one has popped up over the last 7 years. Not many, I think 3 in total. And we fixed it. We didn't care if it was the 5th owner. We knew that mistake had been made. We fixed it. So to actually make it official of the lifetime warranty, we've always had the belief, well, let's let the customer know that warranty is forever on the chassis while the original owner owns it. So it's a great thing. And none of us, well, you're looking at two of the biggest caravan camper abusers known to man. We've never broke
I've seen more bent Navaras in the shed than I've seen bent caravans.
Well,
put it that way.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And their driver error. Let's point that out.
Parked down the front of Vaughan's is the last of the original 9, which has been my vehicle I've had since 2019, and is the last one that's not broken. So maybe I'm just a bit better on the git. That is the last one.
I guess when you're building a caravan chassis and you know what you're doing, it's about using the correct materials. It's about doing the FEA analysis, and so that's doing on a computer in CAD and testing every component where it actually, where things are going to fail. And so it comes up with color grades. And also having an external contractor, which is a legality, that actually signs off on the chassis before we go into production. So we know that this thing is not going to fail. And then if you happen to break a chassis, we will happily replace it because your car's absolutely totaled and broken, and you're probably not going to get back to wherever you come from anyway because you've done something really silly.
Yeah, like tow a 1-week-old caravan across the Simpson Desert to the Big Red Bash, and he broke his car in half 4 sand dunes short.
Unlucky.
But still camped in his van.
So I guess, look, as a bit of from a consumer point of view, like what should consumers be expecting when they see claims that a particular brand or a particular product is off-road ready or off-road capable? What does that mean? And I guess what should we be looking for as a consumer if you're out there? What should you be looking for to substantiate that from a supplier or a brand that you're buying from?
Look, I think it's hard to visualize or see if that product's going to stand up. But one thing you could actually look at on paper is the actual warranty on the product. And so if you're advertising a full off-road van that's going to go anywhere in Australia, then you have to offer the warranty for that particular van to go anywhere in Australia. And we've all seen in the news lately that a particular company had shown product in off-road environments, but the black and white possibly says that it may not be warranted for those particular environments, right? So we're saying in our off-road range, you can take it anywhere in Australia. We don't care. There's no stipulations. You just take it anywhere you like, and your warranty is applicable to that product. The SR range is different. They're built for sealed roads, and so they're an on-road range, and so they have a different warranty to the off-road.
That's all available on the website too. I mean, that's all very visible and transparent. Anybody can check that out at any time.
It is.
And I guess it's doing joining Facebook groups, asking questions, and getting honest answers from customers and what their experiences have been like. You really do have to do your own research. All we can do is say, at MDC, we support our off-road product with a full off-road warranty anywhere in Australia.
So some people confuse things like, we have trailing arm suspension on our off-road product. We also have trailing arm suspension on the on-road product. And recently the question was asked, well, what's the difference? They're the same thing. Well, in actual fact, they're not. And the only comparison I could come up with to explain to the customer was 300 series Land Cruiser on the front end will have double wishbone suspension, and it's made for off-road. And it's arguably the best four-wheel drive in the market. But so does a Honda Accord. And a Honda Accord is you're not going to drive it up to the Cape over 6-inch high corrugations and all that sort of stuff. So it's horses for courses. And it doesn't matter what you own in the way, whether it's an on-road van or an off-road van, there comes a point where you've got to show mechanical sympathy, because honestly, I don't think there's anything in the market I couldn't take out and break if I wanted to be willingly abusive and negligent with the product.
You can break a solid axle forward drive.
Yes.
If you're driving up the wrong hill at the wrong speed,
right.
right? You're going to do the same to any product.
People have got to understand that they're off-road, but you still need to manage tyre pressures. You still need to manage your speed and not hit ruts and washouts at 100 kilometres an hour. And I can tell you, every bent axle I've ever heard of in a warranty claim has been when they've got back from Cape York.
Bumpy roads, big hits.
It's just, back in the day, we don't have as big a hoon factor as buying the product as we used to, but there was a day with MDC where you could guarantee 10% of the customer base was out there smashing it. They'd have everything done to their four-wheel drive, 6-inch lift, coils, big tyres and all the rest of it, then smash their stock trailer through the bush and wonder why things went wrong, why they bent things.
Well, look, yeah, exactly. I mean, Vaughan, for you, I mean, this is a privately owned Australian business. What does it mean personally to you to stand behind your product? You're putting a lifetime warranty on all these chassis. Like, that's a big weight to carry for yourself.
I don't really think so. I don't think there's any risk at all, because it's, we have people like James and his team that are building a product that's going to stand up. And so I don't really have that issue. Like, it may seem like a big deal from the outside looking in, but we've actually never had a claim on it. So, and we've got tens of thousands of units in the market. And so it's really
over 40,000 units or something.
Absolutely. And we've never had a claim on a lifetime chassis warranty. So I think we're doing a pretty good job, and nothing there for me to worry about.
I agree.
Okay, probably I might get the last question I'll give it to James, and then I wanted to give it to Steve as well. James, from your point, what's next for the future of off-road caravanning in Australia?
We're all getting towards that weight. We've been talking about weight a fair bit, and tow vehicles in the market are certainly heading to that 4.5 ton tow. You're starting to see some of those fringe brands playing in that space. So I think naturally the next frontier for off-roading and off-grid is getting into that heavier stuff again, but coming up with a way that those heavier units and those bigger units are still almost as capable as the smaller ones. Dimensionally, absolutely not. But at the moment, it is incredibly difficult to tow anything longer than a 19, essentially, genuinely off-road. So, thinking outside the box as to how that looks, coming up with something where it is genuinely capable in that heavier category, I think we'll be heading towards that nirvana you spoke about before.
Steve, from your point of view, someone who's out there quite a lot on the road?
I think with how cars are progressing now, the variety of vehicles that are more available, and four-wheel drives are getting more and more capable all the time, I think it's more about where people are going to go and the growth in getting off grid. And I think the development is very much around power and being powered, being able to cook.
How it's being used.
Yeah. And it's really, really the part of the business where the demands are the highest. So I think the next big thing will be when someone invents a smarter mousetrap for powering your caravan off grid.
Agree.
I'm just waiting for the next best mousetrap because, yeah.
A wind farm.
Don't get me started.
Speaking of the wrong bloke.
Yeah. No, I think that's where the next big thing will be, is improving on the power systems and off-grid systems that we've got now. Because, look, let's face it, they go everywhere now. It's, sure you can do tweaks and stuff like that, but how people live in them is where the evolution needs to come.
Interesting. Watch this space, hey? All right. Well, look, thank you guys for joining us. It's been a really interesting discussion. There's a lot there from a consumer's perspective to think about and be mindful of when they're looking at products and hopefully looking at MDC, of course. But thank you all for your time.
All
Thanks,
right.
James. Thanks,
you.
Vaughan.
Great.
Steve.
Thank you,
having us.
sir.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed the episode. If you do like it, please subscribe, follow the channel, and check out the MDC website for more information relating to any of the products.
And the masterclass, check them out as well and download a copy of your owner manual.
You heard him. Thanks.